Hello, my name is Ryan from Buster Beagle 3D, and today I'm going to be doing a review of the new B6 60-watt MOPA Fiber Laser from ComMarker. If you're a subscriber to the channel, you may remember that I recently did another review of the B4 60-watt MOPA laser from ComMarker. So what is the same as that previous machine, and what sets this B6 machine apart? Well, let's find out. First, I want to thank ComMarker for providing me with this machine for my honest review, and I also wanted to point out that at the time of this video, the B6 is being offered through a Kickstarter campaign. This means that the machine I am looking at is a pre-production unit, so there are already some differences that I know about between this machine that I received and the final units. I will try to point out these as I know about them, but do keep in mind this when making your decision to back this project or not. Again, this is the B6 60-watt MOPA Fiber Laser, which adds a greater frequency range as well as the addition of a pulse width setting that allows for more consistent colors on stainless steel, as well as a wider range of materials and plastics that the laser can engrave on. I won't go over all the specifics of a MOPA over a regular fiber laser, but if I had to break it down into its most simple form, it means better, more consistent output on stainless steel, a wider range of plastic types including more sensitive to heat plastics that can be engraved, and a larger price tag. It's a super simplification, but honestly, if colors are not important to you, then you would be fine doing everything else with the regular B6 fiber laser that is not the B6 MOPA machine. The machine comes in a regular fiber laser power of 20 watt, 30 watt, and 50 watt, but also comes in a 20, 30, and 60 watt MOPA version of the machine. The assembly was very simple and really only required attaching the tower to the base plate and then attaching the laser to the tower. That's really it. My kit also came with a JPT MOPA fiber laser power source in a separate base. The B6 is somewhat of a split-style fiber laser unit where you can have the plate with the laser on one spot and the base with the power source in another spot. And I said somewhat because you can also attach the base plate with the laser on it to the laser source to make it a combined and integrated unit, which is what I prefer to do, and so that is how you're going to see it on my end. My machine came with a single f-theta lens with a focal length of 210 millimeters that will give you a workable area of 150 by 150 millimeters. The machine works at the 1064 nanometer wavelength, which is what makes the fiber laser the best and fastest choice for engravings on metals. This again is a galvo laser, which means the laser head doesn't move, but tiny mirrors inside do, which account for the blazing fast speeds that this laser can operate at. The new main feature on this machine is an automatic focus setting that is controlled by a touchscreen on the laser head itself. The gantry will raise and lower to the proper height when you click on the auto button on the screen. You do have to be within 120 to 180 millimeters to the surface you are intending to engrave on. You can also click on the gear button at the top and adjust the proper autofocal height of the machine, but this should already come set by the factory. This is a really cool feature, but it does seem to have some drawbacks. The first is that you have to have the object you are engraving on in the red laser dot towards the front of the machine. This may or may not be where you intended to place the object, but you need to make sure that there is something in that location to record the height. This is also an issue with things like tumblers on a rotary, as you would have to measure the height and then move the tumbler into place. The other issue with the autofocus is the material type and even color when trying to use the autofocus could be an issue. I found that when using certain dull, non-reflective materials or black or darker colors, the autofocus didn't seem to be able to register the height. I'm not exactly sure what the machine is using to measure the height, but it does seem to have its limitations. However, again, this is really just an added feature of this machine, and you can certainly just measure the height manually with the nice metal ruler that comes with the machine. You can also adjust the height with the two buttons on the screen or the button on the front of the base of the machine. There is also a knob at the top of the tower for a manual height adjustment as well. On the front of the machine, you will see a plate that has the up and down buttons that I was just talking about, an emergency stop button, and the power button. You do need to hold down that power button for a few seconds to make sure the machine fully powers on before letting go. The B6 machine can work with the provided EasyCAD 2 software or with Lightburn, which is my program of choice. Lightburn is a paid program, and to use that with this particular machine, you do have to purchase the Galvo license. The workable area on this machine is again 150 millimeters by 150 millimeters based on the lens that comes with the machine. The lens is removable, so I'm assuming you can swap it out, but you would have to make sure that the lens you purchase is compatible with the threads on this machine, as they do not seem to be interchangeable with the ComMarker B4 machines, so do keep that in mind. Now, when using an f-theta lens, you typically have to use a .core or correction file that will correct the lens distortion so that when you're engraving with the machine, everything will be square. The issue here is that the .core file that comes with the machine does correct the lens distortion, but for some reason changes the workable area to 170 by 170 millimeters. We know that the workable area is supposed to be 150 millimeters by 150 millimeters, so it just looks wrong in Lightburn, and with the core file installed, we can't change the workable area setting. Without that .core file, the lens distortion would be wrong, so I may try to calibrate my Galvo lens manually so I can set the workable area to the correct figure, but for now, I just set up jobs in the middle 150 by 150 millimeters. The other issue that I wish that could be addressed is that the laser lens sits so far back on the gantry that the workable area lives very close to the tower of the laser and does not utilize the front of the base plate. I'm assuming that it has to be moved back to make room for the automatic focal height adjustment, but it does seem odd to not better utilize the space towards the front of the machine. Okay, so now before I go over how this machine performed, I really want to briefly talk about the enclosure that is available for this machine, plus the one that you will see me use in the test of it. ComMarker does sell a Pro enclosure for this laser. However, if I'm being honest, it really was not for me. The enclosure is pretty large to fit the entire machine into. However, the door of the machine is too small to fit the machine in after it has been assembled. You either need to assemble the enclosure around the machine or lift the entire enclosure over the laser after everything has been assembled. It also makes it harder to access the plugs at the back of the machine and wouldn't allow for the machine to be used as the split tower, as there is no way to pass the cable outside of the machine. I'll talk about those long cables in just a moment, but again, that really wasn't the enclosure I was looking for, so I designed my own. If you saw my last video with the B4 machine, I made a little wood box that I could easily attach my external exhaust fan to keep all of that metal dust out of my work area and lungs. I designed a slightly different box this time around for the B6 using a similar design, but this time cut it out of acrylic and added a front window that I borrowed from the ComMarker enclosure unit. It does a really nice job and doesn't affect the autofocus function and still gives me access to all of the back ports. It also does not add to the overall size of the machine and can be easily removed when need be. I will release the plans if you want to make your own as soon as I make a few adjustments, as well as make sure it still works with the final production units. I only wanted to mention it here so you would understand what you were seeing when you saw me running my tests. Alright, so I mentioned a bunch of things so far, but now let's get into how this machine performed, and I would say that it performed really well. Again, my particular machine was the 60-watt MOPA Fiber Laser, so I was easily able to make colors on stainless steel, just like I was able to with the B4 version of the machine. I made a test grid just to test out the colors, and then ran my Mario file in color, which came out like it did on the B4 MOPA machine. I also ran this Mickey Mouse file I made for the last MOPA as well, and again, it turned out great. I will link the Mickey Mouse Lightburn file as well as my color test file for anyone to use when testing out colors on your own machine. I don't share the Mario file as I made it just as a test and it's not public domain. You may also see that I am running some of the same tests that I did for the B4 version of this machine, because for all intents and purposes, they should function in pretty much the same way. I also ran a black photo aluminum card that came on the USB drive that comes with the machine, and it seemed to turn out very nice. After that, I wanted to run my favorite thing to do with fiber lasers, and that is 3D relief engravings in coins. I first ran a coin that I had made before, which took about 2 hours and was one of these skulls, and that came out pretty nice. On the USB drive that came with the machine, they also gave me this 3D coin file of a spider to run in Lightburn, so I popped that into the machine and it ran it as well. Again, it was about 2 hours and the coin turned out nice. I was pretty happy with the results. I also really wanted to test a fiber laser on a stone, so I took this rock my daughter gave me because she said it was shaped like a heart. I wanted to see how it would look if I engraved a heart into it, and it was a pretty cool project to make. I have no idea what kind of stone this is, but it was engraved over 3 millimeters deep into that stone before I stopped it because I was afraid of going too deep. It's really cool to engrave into stone and something I'll be playing around with more in the future for sure. The B6 also comes with a foot pedal, which I personally like to simply set up to the machine as a hand pedal. It makes for super quick work of these business cards I wanted for a convention. This is also a really good time to show you the speed at which this machine can work. I will run this now in real time so you can see it in action. After I had finished a bunch of these tests and everything functioned as expected, I wanted to test out the rotary that ComMarker sent me with this machine. I don't believe this comes with the base unit of the B6, but can be added on. The base B6 does come with the driver that you would need to control the rotary accessories, but just not the rotaries itself. The B6 also comes with a tower riser that can attach to the current tower to raise the laser head up to accommodate the extra space you need to use the rotary, or anything larger for that matter. The rotary that ComMarker sent me was their 5-in-1 version that came with really two types of rotary units. The first was your standard roller unit that works great for perfectly cylindrical objects. The rotary also comes with a supporting tower so you can make sure that whatever you hold in place will stay in place and be level, but for whatever reason, it only works with the chuck version of the rotary. It would have been nice if this was made to work with the roller version of the rotary as well, so I could engrave on tapered objects with the rollers instead of having to prop a cup up some manual way. But as far as I could tell, the supporting tower would not be in the right position for the rollers to work correctly in that function. Also, speaking of positions, I love how these rotary devices can be bolted down so you are sure that the cup or whatever you're engraving on is perfectly perpendicular to the laser head, which means that you should have a nice square artwork all around the cup. The issue here is that the position that you bolt the rollers and chuck down are not perfectly centered under the laser, which means that the area where it will engrave is not at the highest point of the cup or tumbler or whatever you're engraving. It's actually going to engrave about 5 millimeters to the back of the center of the cup, so you just need to account for that when using the rotary function bolted down. I was able to engrave 2 water bottles and a tumbler with the rotary, and they turned out pretty good. I still need to adjust the split size as I was getting some vertical lines, but I ran out of things to engrave on, so I need to get some more, but overall everything worked really nice. After that, I removed the rollers and attached the chuck rotary. This is the one that would work with that supporting tower for things like tumblers and mugs and round objects like golf balls or Christmas ornaments, but it was the ring function that I wanted to test out. I wanted to run something on the outside of this ring, which I did with the rod attachment on the chuck. You can then tilt the head back and engrave on the inside of the ring, but do keep in mind that the text has to be mirrored on the y-axis, otherwise the inside text will be backwards. Everything turned out as expected, and you can really come up with many different ways and configurations to use both of these rotary setups. The only thing I wish the kit came with was that little level for making sure the chuck as well as the glasses or whatever you're engraving on are level. It's really important for making sure you get nice and even engravings. You can pick up these little bubble levels on Amazon for pretty cheap, but it would have been nice if they were included. The last thing that the company also sent me, which again is an additional accessory and would be extra, is a metal sheet holder. When using a fiber laser, it can oftentimes generate a good amount of heat. When using it on thin metals, there can be a tendency to warp under that heat, and so this is where that fixture comes in. This will hold those thin sheets so they not only do not move, but it also reduces that warp. I used it on an image of an eagle that I engraved and then cut out the sheet. Again, this would typically slightly warp the metal, but this device held firm and kept everything in place. That is pretty much a rundown of this machine, but again, both the B4 and B6 come in 60 watt MOPA fiber laser versions of the machine. So what is the difference and why would you go with one over the other? The first and most significant difference between the two is the size of the machines. The B6 is significantly smaller and lighter than the B4 machine. You can see by just how much when you have the two sitting next to each other. Both machines have motorized height adjustments, but only the B6 version of the machine has the automatic height adjustment. The knob of the B6 machine is also very easy to adjust by hand, whereas the one that comes on the B4 is very hard to turn and seems to have more friction against its motor. The B4 machine does allow for the use of two different lenses that come with the machine, a lens for a 110mm work area and one for a 200mm work area. As far as I know, the B6 will only come with one lens that has the 150mm work area. The B4 machine also has a longer tower to accommodate the larger workable area and a rotary, but the B6 machine comes with that extra riser to lift the laser head up. The B4 has a handle on it and comes with a cage to be able to use the laser handheld. The B6 seems to not offer that function, which to be honest is a welcome omission, as I felt that it was not a feature I really wanted on a fiber laser machine. That does bring up one more point for me about the B6. As you can see, the B6 still has the long cable running out of the laser head, presumably so that you can have the base off to the side for that split fiber design. However, it's my personal opinion that the B6 is so compact that there is really just not a reason for not mounting the laser lens on the base itself. If you did that, you could essentially shorten this cable out of the back of the machine to make it more manageable. To be honest, the extra long cord is my least favorite aspect of this machine, as it's just something else to get in the way. The B4 machine also has buttons on the head of the laser for red mark or framing of the work pieces, as well as M for mark or running the jobs. The B6 machine does not. However, I can't say that I use that function a lot for the B4, and both the B4 and B6 come with that pedal to run jobs, so honestly, it's not really needed. The last comment about the two machines is that given the size difference between the two lasers, there is supposedly more of a need for exhaust ventilation on the smaller, more compact B6 versus the B4 machine. This means that as soon as you turn the B6 on, you will hear some pretty loud fans turn on, and they are on anytime the machine is turned on. On the B4 machine, there is much more space in there, and the only time you hear the fans is when the machine is engraving and the laser source fans kick on. On the B6, they are always there and loud. I have spoken to the company about it, and they did say that they were planning on installing smaller fans that still provided adequate exhaust air, but are smaller and therefore quieter for the user. I only have the very large fans, and so they are loud. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of the differences between the two machines. Overall, I do like how much more compact the B6 is over the B4. I think the autofocus feature does work pretty nice most of the time, but still does take a little getting used to how to set it up properly. I essentially use it and then just double check it with the ruler to make sure everything looks correct. I do wish the company sold a smaller, more compact enclosure, because you absolutely need to protect your eyes and lungs from the metal dust and laser light, but I have been pretty happy with what I've been able to work with on this machine so far. I look forward to even more testing and dialing it in to be my MOPA fiber laser of choice right now. I wanted to once again thank ComMarker for allowing me to test this machine out. Depending on when you are watching this video, the B6 may still be in its Kickstarter campaign or available directly through their website. I will have affiliate links in the description that do help out this channel if you chose to use them, but as always, it doesn't affect my views on the machine one way or the other. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, drop a comment, it helps the algorithm, and consider subscribing for more content having to do with laser engravers, 3D printers, injection molding, and all things maker. Thanks again, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.